You signed up for expensive synthetic fertilizer because the bag promised a miracle. You watched your tomato seedlings curl and yellow anyway, the leaves drooping like they were apologizing for failing you. But across town, a 70-year-old gardener is harvesting roses the size of your fist using 3 ingredients from his kitchen cabinet. No chemicals, no bags with neon logos, just coffee grounds, crushed eggshells, and a trick with rainwater that the agronomists at ESALQ confirmed in a 2019 study. The study measured a neutral pH shift 8 days after burying dried grounds, not the acid spike critics had predicted for decades. If you have ever felt that sinking frustration when your garden refuses to cooperate despite your best efforts, you already know the trap that most DIY gardeners fall into. You are about to learn why that trap exists and exactly how to sidestep it. Sue James, as the neighborhood calls him, never opened a single textbook on soil chemistry. He just noticed something strange about his roses. After 3 decades of dumping coffee grounds haphazardly into the soil, he finally started paying attention to which bushes thrived and which ones struggled. The ones nearest the kitchen door, where he emptied his morning filter, grew darker leaves and bloomed earlier. He did not know it yet, but he had stumbled into a paradox. The ESALQ study measured the pH of soil buried with dried coffee grounds at 200 grams per square meter. On day 1, the acidity barely moved. By day 8, the pH had climbed from 5.8 to 6.5. The grounds did not acidify the soil. They neutralized it. The mechanism, the researchers noted, involved microbial activity feeding on the organic carbon in the grounds, which in turn stabilized the pH buffer. Sue James had no idea about any of this. He just saw the results and kept pouring. If you want to keep uncovering these hidden mechanisms that the experts keep missing, subscribe to this channel, because every kitchen scrap holds a forensic secret that your garden is waiting to reveal. Drop the word paradox in the comments if you have ever watched a gardening rule get overturned by what actually happened in your own soil. But here is where the trap springs shut for most people. You bury a whole banana peel next to your tomato plant, thinking you are feeding it potassium. What you actually do is invite every ant within 50 meters to a week-long feast. You toss wet coffee grounds directly onto the soil surface, and within 24 hours, a sour, fermented smell rises from the ground. That smell is anaerobic decomposition, the opposite of what healthy soil needs. The auditory crunch of stepping on a dried, moldy peel that you buried last month should be the first clue that something went wrong. The tactile slime of a whole banana rotting underground instead of breaking down into nutrients, that is the moment most gardeners give up and go back to the synthetic bag. But the 70-year-old gardener does not make these mistakes. He dries his coffee grounds first, spreads them in a thin layer on newspaper, and waits until they crumble between his fingers before mixing them into the top 2 inches of soil. The difference between rot and fertilization is preparation. You still with me? Good, because the real secret comes next. Step 1 starts with the eggshells. You rinse them, let them dry overnight on the windowsill, then crush them into a fine powder. Not chunks, not flakes, powder. The Universidad Federal de Visosa published decomposition tables showing that whole eggshells take 6 months to release their calcium into the soil. Powdered shells release the same calcium within 24 hours. You mix 2 tablespoons of this powder into the top layer of soil around your plant. Then you water it lightly. The immediate result is something you can see within 3 days. The stem stiffens, the leaf edges stop curling downward. This is the calcium-triggering cell wall formation, the same mechanism that prevents blossom end rot in tomatoes. But watch what happens when you combine this with the coffee grounds.
The timestamp in the
from
sync
step
block is
2.
058 to
Step
05.16,
2
not 0408.
calls
I
back
will
to
correct
those
this.
dried coffee grounds. You take the powder from the morning filter, spread it on a baking sheet, and let it sit for 24
the timestamp in the sync
hours
block is
until it feels
0516
like
to
coarse
0521,
sand.
not 0416.
Not wet,
I will correct this.
not clumpy, bone dry. Then you mix 1 cup of those dry grounds into the same soil where you buried the eggshell powder. You know that moment when you open a bag of store-bought fertilizer and smell that sharp chemical odor, and a quiet voice in your head whispers that this cannot be good for the earthworms? That voice is correct. The 2020 study published in Agronomy found that actively aerated compost tea made from kitchen scraps like these increased soil microbial biomass by 37% and plant nitrogen uptake by 22% compared to synthetic fertilizers. The old gardener does not know the numbers, but he knows that his soil smells like damp earth after rain, not like a chemistry lab. This is where the path splits. Subscribe now to stay on the side that gets the full recipe, because the 3rd step is where everything changes, and you don't want to piece it together from half-remembered comments. Tell me in the comments, when was the last time your soil smelled like damp earth instead of a chemistry lab? The 3rd step is what separates the frustrated gardener from the one who gets results. You take a teaspoon of blackstrap molasses and dissolve it into a gallon of rainwater, not tap water. Chlorine kills the microorganisms in compost tea. You pour this mixture into a bucket with 2 cups of the dried coffee grounds and a tablespoon of the powdered eggshells. Then you stir it vigorously every few hours for 24 hours. The liquid turns slightly frothy on top, and the smell shifts from earthy to something almost sweet. That froth is billions of aerobic bacteria multiplying, fed by the molasses carbon source. A 2021 study in plant and soil systems confirmed that molasses in compost tea boosts rhizobacteria populations by 45%. When you apply this liquid as a soil drench and a foliar spray, you're not just feeding the plant. You're feeding the entire underground ecosystem that the plant depends on. Here is the proof moment. Sue James did not guess. He tested. He treated 1 rose bush with his homemade mixture and left the neighboring bush completely alone. Both bushes had been planted the same week, from the same nursery batch, in the same type of soil. After 8 days, the treated soil pH measured 6.5. The untreated soil measured 5.8. The difference was not small. The treated bush produced new leaves that were visibly darker within 2 weeks, and the first flower bud appeared 3 weeks earlier than the untreated plant. The 2019 ESALQ study had predicted this neutralization. The old gardener's control test delivered it. This is not anecdotal wisdom from a man who got lucky. This is reproducible mechanical chemistry that anyone can verify with a simple soil test kit from any garden center. But here is where most people quit. They try this recipe once, do not see an instant transformation, and conclude that it does not work. They go back to the blue bag labeled with the neon logo, the same product that generated $4.1 billion in revenue for Scott's Miracle-Gro in 2023. The 2019 study measured the shift on day 8, not day 1. The microbial populations need time to establish. The eggshell calcium needs those first 24 hours to break down. The coffee grounds need to be dry before they go into the soil. If you skip that step, you create the anaerobic rot that smells sour and repels roots. Remember the ant invasion I warned you about at the start? That happens when you bury whole peels instead of ground eggshells. The solution is simple. Always dry and powder your ingredients before application. Patience is not a virtue here. Patience is the mechanism. The next video will take this compost tea and pair it with a leaf mold you can harvest from your own yard. And you will not want to piece that together from memory. Subscribe now to lock in that video the moment it drops. Write patience in the comments if you are ready to trust the 8-day timeline instead of the neon bag. Now imagine your rose bush 3 days from now, standing tall under that humid morning sun, the earthworm that surfaced after the rain still working its magic underground. The coffee grounds you mixed into the soil yesterday are already feeding the microbes that will feed your plant next week. The eggshell powder you crushed this morning is releasing calcium into every root hair within arm's reach. You did not need a $40 bag of synthetic fertilizer. You needed 3 scraps from your kitchen and the willingness to wait 8 days. The old gardener knows this because he spent 30 years watching his neighbor's plants outperform his own before he finally understood why. He was not smarter. He was just more patient. In the next video, we are going deeper into what happens when you combine this compost tea with a specific type of leaf mold that you can harvest from your own backyard. The result will change how you think about mulch forever. But for now, look at your tomato plant and decide which path you want to take. He was not smarter. He was just more patient. And patience in the world of soil is the single most underrated variable in the equation. The synthetic fertilizer industry has spent billions convincing you that gardening is a battle against nature that requires chemical weapons. The phosphorus numbers on the bag, the nitrogen percentages, the fancy slow-release coatings, all of it feeds the illusion that a plant needs what comes out of the factory. But the 2019 study at ESALQ measured something the factories never mention. The soil pH neutralized not because the coffee grounds added something, but because the microbes they fed removed something. The chemistry of living soil operates on a principle that cannot be patented. Microbes eat carbon, excrete buffers, and build structure. You cannot bottle that. You can only feed it. The old gardener understood this without ever reading the study. He knew that when the soil smells like fresh earth instead of sour rot, the roots grow deeper. He knew that when the leaves darken the day after a rain, the calcium has reached the cell walls. He knew that when the earthworms surface after a drench, the microbial network is working. These are not mysteries. They are observations repeated enough times to become certainty. The visual of a leaf unfurling green and wide after weeks of stagnation is proof enough for any gardener who pays attention. The real failure of most DIY gardening attempts is not the wrong recipe, it is the wrong timeline. You water a plant and expect it to transform overnight. But the soil does not work on your schedule. The coffee grounds need those 8 days to cycle through the microbes. The eggshell powder needs its 24 hours to dissolve into ionic calcium. The molasses needs its full day to multiply the bacteria into a visible froth. Every step has its own clock, and the clock cannot be rushed. The sour smell of haste is the smell of failure. So here is the truth that the bag with the neon logo does not want you to know. The plant does not care where the nutrients come from. It cares that they arrive in the right form at the right time. A calcium ion released from a crushed eggshell is chemically identical to one released from a factory granule. The difference is that the eggshell calcium arrives attached to organic compounds that feed the soil biology. The factory calcium arrives with a side of salts that slowly degrade the soil structure over years. The plant gets fed either way. The soil only gets fed one way. The choice is not about cost. It is not even about effort. It is about whether you are gardening for this season's harvest or for the soil your grandchildren will dig in. The old gardener buried his first batch of coffee grounds when he was 40 years old. He dug the best rows of his life at 69. He did not accelerate the process. He just never stopped.